The day my father told me I would never be successful. He said it in front of everyone. And the worst part? No one disagreed with him. But what happened 2 years later when my phone rang with a call from Bloomberg was something he never saw coming. "My son," my father said, shaking his head with a laugh. "He doesn't even know what success looks like." A few people at the dinner table chuckled quietly. My name is Noah Bennett, and growing up in my family meant one thing: if you weren't winning, you didn't matter. My father, Charles Bennett, was the kind of man who measured everything in numbers: income, assets, reputation. And in his eyes, I had none. Across the table, my older brother Evan Bennett leaned back in his chair, smiling like he already knew how this conversation would go. Evan was everything my father wanted: top business school, six-figure job, perfect image. Meanwhile, I was the one who had dropped out, not because I couldn't handle it, but because I had chosen something else, something my father called a mistake. "You left school for what?" he said that night. "An app." "It's not just an app," I replied calmly. "Oh, really?" he said. "Then what is it?" I didn't answer right away, because explaining it to him had never worked before. "It's a data platform," I said finally. Evan laughed. "Of course it is." My father smirked. Every failed idea starts with a fancy name. The words didn't surprise me. I had heard worse. But that night felt different, because something in his voice wasn't just disappointment anymore. It was final. "You had one chance," he said. "And you threw it away?" I looked around the table. My mother stayed quiet. My brother avoided my eyes. No one said anything. No one defended me. That's when I realized something. This wasn't just a conversation. This was a decision. "You're done here," my father said. My chest tightened slightly. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said coldly, "I'm not funding your life anymore." Silence. Heavy silence. "If you want to chase your little startup dream," he continued, "do it without my help." Evan shook his head. "You're really going through with this?" My father didn't hesitate. "Yes." I sat there for a moment, then I nodded. "Okay." He frowned slightly. "Okay, I'll figure it out." He leaned forward. "No, you won't." The words were sharp, confident, certain. "You don't have the discipline," he said. "You don't have the experience." He paused. "And you definitely don't have what it takes." For a second, the room felt completely still. Then he said the sentence that stayed with me longer than anything else. "You will never be successful." I didn't argue, didn't react, didn't even try to defend myself, because deep down, I already knew something he didn't. Success doesn't always look like what people expect. Sometimes it looks like failure first. I stood up from the table. "Where are you going?" my mother asked quietly. Picked up my jacket. "Out." My father scoffed. "Running away won't fix anything." I looked at him. "I'm not running." Then I walked out. That night, I left everything behind. The house, the expectations, the version of my life my father had already decided for me. And for the next 2 years, I worked. Not for approval, not for validation, but for something else, something bigger, something no one in that room believed in. And then one morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but when I did, a voice on the other end said something that made everything stop. "Hi, is this Noah Bennett?" "Yes, this is Bloomberg." I froze. "What?" The voice continued. "We'd like to feature you in an interview." My grip tightened around the phone. "About what?" There was a short pause. Then the words that changed everything. "About the company you just built." For a moment, I didn't say anything. I just stood there, phone pressed to my ear, trying to process what I had just heard. "This is Bloomberg." It didn't feel real. "I think you have the wrong person," I said finally. There was a light chuckle on the other end. "No, Mr. Bennett," the voice replied. "Wait, we're very sure we don't." My grip tightened slightly. "Then how did you even find me?" "Your platform has been gaining attention over the last few months," she said. "Especially after the recent data acquisition deal." My chest tightened. That deal. The one I hadn't told anyone about yet. "You're talking about Nexicor?" I asked carefully, as she replied.
"Your company."
Hearing those words out loud, from someone like Bloomberg, made it feel real in a way it never had before. For 2 years, Nexicor had just been something I worked on in silence. Late nights, empty apartment. No backup plan, no safety net. Now suddenly, it had a name people recognized. "We'd like to schedule an interview," she continued. "Preferably this week." I leaned against the wall, still trying to keep my voice steady. "Why?" There was a brief pause. "Because, Mr. Bennett, you just closed a deal worth $48 million. Silence. Even though I already knew the number, hearing it said like that hit differently, and I asked. "And," she said, "people want to know who you are." I exhaled slowly. "Okay, great," she replied. "We'll send over the details." The call ended, and just like that, everything changed. I stood there for a long moment, staring at my phone. 2 years. 2 years of being told I would fail. 2 years of building something no one believed in. And now the world was starting to notice. Across the room, my laptop screen still showed the Nexacore dashboard. Live data streams, active clients, revenue numbers updating in real time. It wasn't just an idea anymore. It was real. I walked over and sat down slowly. For a second, I thought about calling someone, telling them, sharing the moment. But there was no one, not really. Because the one person I had wanted to prove wrong had already decided who I was. "You will never be successful." My father's words echoed in my head. I leaned back in my chair, and I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I smiled. Not because of the money, not because of the interview, but because, for the first time, I didn't need his approval anymore. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Bloomberg. It was a message from a number I hadn't seen in 2 years. Evan, my brother. I stared at the screen, then opened it.
How?
The message was short. "Dad saw something on the news. Call me." My chest tightened. Already, I turned on the TV, flipped through channels, then I saw it. A financial news segment. Headline at the bottom of the screen: "Rising tech founder closes multi-million-dollar deal." And right there, on the screen, was my name. Noah Bennett. I leaned forward slightly, because the anchor was still talking. And sources say, this may be just the beginning. The segment cut to a clip of the Nexacore interface. My system, my work, my risk. All of it. Now public. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Evan. This one wasn't short. "Dad wants you to come home tonight." I stared at it for a long moment, then I locked my phone. Because for the first time in my life, wasn't sure I wanted to go back. I didn't reply right away. I just sat there, staring at my phone as Evan's message stayed on the screen. "Dad wants you to come home tonight." 2 years. 2 years without a single call. No messages, no support, no belief. And now, one news segment later, he wanted to see me. I let out a slow breath and leaned back in my chair. For a moment, I almost ignored it. Almost. But something inside me said this wasn't over. Not yet. So I picked up the phone and called Evan. He answered on the second ring. "Noah." His voice sounded different, less confident, more careful. "Yeah," I said. There was a brief pause. "What?" Then he said quietly, "He saw it," I figured. Another pause. But in watching it on repeat, that didn't surprise me. My father never missed anything when it came to business or reputation. "So," I asked. Evan hesitated. "He wants you to come home." I read the message. "Noah," he said slowly, "this is a big deal, I know." "That deal?" he continued. "48 million?" "Yeah," he let out a low whistle. "That's insane." For the first time in my life, Evan sounded impressed, not amused, not dismissive, impressed. "Look," he said, "just come home. Talk to him." I stared at the wall for a moment. Then I asked the question that had been sitting in my mind since the call started. "Why now?" Evan didn't answer right away. Then he said something honest, because now he's listening. The words hit differently than I expected. Not because they surprised me, but because they confirmed what I already knew. Before, he hadn't been. "I'll think about it," I said. Evan sighed. "Noah, don't drag this out." "I'm not dragging anything out," I replied calmly. "I just don't know if I want to walk back into a place that already decided who I was." Silence. Then Evan spoke again. "It's not the same right now," I almost laughed. "He's exactly the same."
No, Evan said quietly.
"He's not." Something in his tone made me pause. "What do you mean?" Evan exhaled slowly. "He's shaken." That word caught my attention. My father. Shaken. He doesn't understand how this happened, Evan continued. He keeps asking how he missed it. I leaned forward slightly. Missed what? You? Evan said. The room went quiet. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Evan added something else. And there's something else you should know. What? He didn't just see the deal. My chest tightened. What else did he see? Evan hesitated again. Then he said it. He saw the valuation. I frowned. What valuation? Evan's voice dropped slightly. Noah? What? The company isn't worth $48 million. I felt my grip tighten around the phone. What are you talking about? That was just the deal value, he said. Then he paused and said the one thing I hadn't expected. They're valuing Nexicor at over $300 million. Silence. Complete silence. Even though I had seen projections, even though I knew where things were heading, hearing it said like that, out loud, hit differently. That's not public yet, I said. It is now, Evan replied. My stomach dropped. What? Leaked? He said. Financial blogs picked it up. He stood up slowly. Are you serious? Yes. I walked toward the window, my mind racing. Because if that number was out there, everything was about to change. Investors, media, attention, pressure, and most of all, my father. Evan spoke again. He's not asking you to come home anymore? I frowned. What? He's waiting for what? Evan's voice lowered. For you to decide if you're coming back. As his son. Paused. Or as something else. I felt a strange tension settle in my chest, because for the first time, that choice felt real. I didn't answer Evan right away. I just stood there by the window, staring out at the city like it might somehow give me the answer. I'll come, I said finally. Evan exhaled. Good. But not for him, I added. There was a pause. Then for who? He asked. For me. The line went quiet for a second. Then Evan said something softer. Yeah, I figured. We hung up, and just like that, I was going back, not as the person who left 2 years ago, but as someone completely different. That night, I stood outside the house I grew up in. Same driveway, same lights, same silence. Nothing had changed, except everything had. I took a breath and walked in. The moment I stepped inside, I felt it. That familiar tension. Like the house itself was waiting to see who I had become. From the living room, I could hear voices. Low. Serious. I walked in, and there he was. My father, Charles Bennett, standing near the fireplace, just like he always did. Evan stood beside him. Both of them turned the moment they saw me. For a second, no one spoke. Then my father said my name. Noah. It was strange hearing it like that. Not sharp, not dismissive, just quiet.
I
nodded. Yeah, he looked at me carefully. He was trying to match the person in front of him with the one he thought he knew. You came. I said I would. Another pause. Evan stepped back slightly, giving us space. And just like that, it was just me and him. Again, same room, same people, different reality. My father cleared his throat. I saw the news. I figured. He nodded. That deal? $48 million? I said. Yes. He looked at me. And for the first time in my life, he didn't look certain. How? He asked. The question wasn't aggressive. It wasn't mocking. It was genuine. I took a breath. I built something people needed. He frowned slightly. What exactly did you build? I didn't answer right away because explaining it to him still felt complicated, but this time I didn't hold back. A data intelligence platform, I said. It tracks real-time market behavior and predicts risk patterns before they happen. Evan raised his eyebrows slightly. That's actually impressive. My father didn't react to him. He was still watching me. Predicts? He said. Yes, with accuracy. I met his eyes. Enough for investors to trust it. Silence. Then he asked the question I knew was coming, the valuation. I didn't respond immediately, but he already knew. $300 million, he said. I nodded. Yes. The room went quiet again. My father turned slightly, like he needed a second to process it. Because this wasn't just success. This was something bigger. Something he hadn't predicted. Something he hadn't controlled. And he turned back toward me and said the one thing I never thought I would hear from him. I was wrong. The words hit harder than anything else. Not because I needed them, but because he had never said them before. Not once. Not to anyone. Evan looked at him in surprise. "You've never said that before," he said. "I know," my father replied. Then he looked at me again. "I underestimated you." I nodded slowly. "Yes." He didn't argue, didn't defend himself. He just stood there. Then he took a step closer. "What happens now?" he asked. The question felt heavier than anything else, because this wasn't about proving him wrong anymore. This was about what came next. I looked around the house, the same place I had walked out of 2 years ago, the same place that had decided I would fail. Then I looked back at him and said something simple. "That depends." He frowned. "On what?" I met his eyes. "On whether you still think I need you to succeed." The room went completely silent. Because this time, I wasn't asking for approval. I was setting the terms. For a moment, my father didn't respond. He just stood there, staring at me like he was trying to understand something he had never needed to before. Control. For most of his life, he had it. In business, in decisions, in people, including me. But right now, he didn't. "No," he said finally. The word came out slower than usual, more careful. "I don't think you need me." The room stayed quiet. Evan shifted slightly beside him, clearly not used to hearing our father speak like that. My father took another step closer. "But that doesn't mean I don't want to be part of it." There it was. Not control. Not authority. Something else. Interest. Maybe even respect. I crossed my arms slightly. "Part of what?" "Your company," he said. "Nexicor." I almost smiled. Of course, that's what this was about now. It wasn't just seeing me. He was seeing the opportunity. "What about it?" I asked. He straightened slightly, slipping back into the tone he always used when talking business. "It has potential," he said. "Serious potential. I know." With the right guidance, he continued, "It could scale much faster." Evan nodded slightly. He's not wrong. I looked at both of them. "What kind of guidance are we talking about?" My father didn't hesitate. "Strategic partnerships, investor networks, expansion planning." I tilted my head slightly. "And you think I don't have that?" He paused. "Not long, but long enough." "I think you have momentum," he said, "and give you leverage." That was a better answer. Still not enough. I stepped a little closer. "And what do you want in return?" Now we were at the real conversation. My father didn't avoid it. "A seat at the table," he said. Evan looked between us. "Dad!" But my father raised a hand slightly. "No. Let's be clear. Not asking for control." "I'm not asking for control." I watched him carefully. "Then what?" "An opportunity," he said. "To work with you." The room felt different now. Not like a family conversation. It's like a negotiation. And for the first time in my life, we were speaking on equal ground. I thought about it for a moment. Then I asked the question that mattered most. "Why?" My father frowned slightly. "Why? What? Why now?" I said, "Silence." Then he answered honestly. "Because I was wrong." I didn't respond. He continued, "And because what you built—" He paused. I didn't see it coming, that part I believed. Because if he had, he never would have let me walk out that door. Evan spoke quietly. "You should hear him out." I looked at him. "Think I should trust him?" Evan hesitated. Then he said something simple. "I think you should decide what you want." That was fair. I looked back at my father. The man who had told me I would never be successful, now standing in front of me, asking to be part of something I built without him. I took a breath. Then I said the one thing that shifted everything again. "I'll consider it." My father nodded slowly. "That's all I'm asking." But I wasn't done. There's one condition. He looked at me. "What?" I held his gaze. "No control." He nodded. "Agreed." "No influence over decisions." Another nod. "Agreed." "And no rewriting the story of how this happened." That one hit differently. Paused, then nodded again. "Agreed." I stepped back slightly. "Then we'll talk." The room fell quiet again, but this time, it wasn't tense. It was something else. Balanced. For the first time, We weren't father and son arguing over failure. We were two people, standing on opposite sides of success and deciding what came next. The room didn't feel the same anymore. Not tense, not hostile, just different. For the first time in my life, I wasn't standing in front of my father trying to prove something. I had already done that. Now, we were deciding what came next. My father looked at me carefully. So he said, "When do we start?" I shook my head slightly. "We don't." He frowned. "What do you mean?" I said I'd consider it, I replied. Not agree to it. Evan let out a quiet breath, like he had been expecting that. My father didn't argue. He just nodded slowly. "That's fair." I walked toward the table and set my keys down. "I didn't come back to rebuild something old," I said. "I came back to close it." The words landed heavier than I expected. Evan looked at me. "What does that mean?" I glanced around the room one last time. "This house, this conversation, all of it," I said. "It doesn't define me anymore." My father's expression tightened slightly. "I never said it did." "You didn't have to," I replied. Silence. Then I continued. "For years I thought success meant proving you wrong." I paused. "But it doesn't." My father watched me closely. "Then what does it mean?" I met his eyes. "It means I don't need you to be right anymore." The room went quiet again. Not uncomfortable, just honest. Evan stepped forward slightly. "So what now?" I picked up my phone. "I go back." "To what?" he asked. "To building," I said. My father nodded slowly. "That's what you've been doing." "Yes." "And it worked." I didn't smile. "It's working." He studied me for a moment. Then he said something unexpected. "I'd still like to help." I looked at him, I know, and I thought about it. Then I gave him a real answer. "If I ever need it," I paused. "I'll ask." That was the best I could offer, and he knew it. He nodded once, understood. Evans smiled slightly. "That's probably the best deal you're going to get from him." For the first time, I smiled back. "Probably." A quiet moment passed between all three of us. No tension, no pressure, just something that hadn't existed here before. Respect. Then I picked up my jacket. I should go. My father didn't stop me this time. He didn't argue. Just said one thing. "I'm proud of you." I paused. Those words, they hit differently than everything else. Not because I needed them, but because for so long, they never came. I turned slightly. "Thanks." That was enough. I walked toward the door, opened it, and stepped outside. The night air felt colder than before, but lighter, like something had finally been left behind. I got into my car, sat there for a moment, and then looked at my phone. Missed calls, emails, messages, investors, media, everything moving faster now. But for the first time, I wasn't overwhelmed, because I wasn't chasing anything anymore. I'd already built it. I started the engine and drove away. Not from something, but toward something. Something I chose. Something I owned. Something no one could take credit for. Because in the end, success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about proving yourself right. The next morning started differently. Not because anything outside had changed, but because I had. For the first time in years. I woke up without that weight in my chest, the need to prove something to someone who had already made up their mind about me now. There was only one thing that mattered. Building by 9 a.m., I was already in the office. Hexicor's headquarters wasn't flashy. No glass towers. No luxury branding. Just a clean space filled with screens. Data streams, and a small team that had been there since the beginning. People who didn't laugh when I said I was building something big. People who stayed. Morning, Lena Park. My lead engineer said as I walked in. She didn't look up from her screen. "Morning," I replied. She finally glanced at me. Trending. I raised an eyebrow. That was fast. She turned her monitor slightly toward me. Financial. Blogs, tech sites. Even mainstream news outlets. All carrying the same headline: Nexacor founder disrupts market with predictive data platform. I exhaled slowly. "Yeah, I saw." She studied me for a second. "You okay?" "Yeah." "You don't look surprised." "I'm not." I smirked slightly. "Good." Then she turned serious again, because things are about to get crazy. I already knew that. My phone buzzed again. New email. Subject line: Bloomberg interview confirmation. Time, location, live segment. I stared at it for a moment, then locked my phone. Let's focus, I said. Lena nodded. Already are. She pointed at the main screen. Traffic's up 300%. Since last night, I stepped closer. The dashboard lit up in real time. New users, new clients, new data streams feeding into the system every second. This is just the beginning, she said. I nodded. I know. By noon, the office was different. Busier, louder, more calls, more movement, because success doesn't arrive quietly. It shows up all at once, demands you keep up. At 2 p.m., I walked into the Bloomberg studio. Bright lights, cameras, controlled chaos. A producer handed me a mic. We'll go live in 3 minutes. I nodded, sat down, and for a second, everything slowed. 2 years ago, I was sitting in a small apartment with a laptop and a half-finished idea. Now, I was here. The host smiled at me from across the table. Ready? Yes. Good, she said. Because everyone wants to know one thing. I leaned forward slightly. What? She smiled. How did you do it? The question felt familiar, like something I had been answering my entire life. But this time, the answer was different. By not listening to the wrong voices, I said. She raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? I thought about it for a second. Then I said it clearly. Everyone has an opinion about what you can or can't become. I paused, but most of them are guessing. The camera zoomed in slightly, and the ones who were the loudest, I continued, are usually the most wrong. The host smiled. I liked that. The interview continued. Questions about the company, the technology, the future. But none of it felt overwhelming, because for the first time, I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was just telling the truth. Later that evening, I watched the replay. Not for validation, just to see it, to understand how far things had come. And right at the end of the segment, the host said something that stuck with me. This might be one of the fastest rising companies we've seen this year. I leaned back in my chair, and for a moment, I thought about that night, the dinner table, the laughter, the words, "We'll never be successful." I smiled slightly because now, the entire world had heard a different version of that story, but what I didn't know yet was that someone else had been watching that interview too, and what they did next was about to change everything again. I didn't know someone was watching, not until the next morning. My phone started ringing before I even got out of bed. The unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. But something told me to answer. Hello? Is this Noah Bennett? The voice was calm, professional, yes. This is Evelyn Cross, senior partner at Arden Capital. That got my attention. Arden Capital wasn't just another firm. They were one of the biggest venture funds in the market. They didn't call people like me, unless something big was about to happen. I watched your Bloomberg interview, she continued. I sat up slowly. Okay. We'd like to meet, I exhaled. That was fast. She didn't laugh. We moved fast. That told me everything I needed to know. When? I asked. Today. By noon, I was sitting across from her in a glass-walled conference room overlooking the city. Evelyn Cross didn't waste time. No introductions, she said. I already know who you are. I nodded. Then let's get to it. She slid a folder across the table. I opened it. For a second, I didn't react. I read it wrong, but I hadn't. I looked up. It was a buyout offer. She nodded. Yes. I flipped the page. The number was there. Clear. Unmistakable. $820 million. My grip tightened slightly on the paper. You're offering $820 million for Nexicor. Yes. Silence. She watched me carefully, waiting for a reaction, for excitement, for disbelief, for anything. Bored, because the truth just wasn't. The moment I had been working for. What's the condition? I asked. She smiled slightly. You stay on as CEO for 2 years? After that, your choice? I leaned back in my chair. and control. Majority stake transfers to us. She said, you retain significant equity. Standard structure, smart, calculated, powerful, but still, trade. I closed the folder slowly. It's a big number, I said. Yes, but it's not the right one, for the first time. Excuse me? I'm not selling, I said. Silence. Real silence. The kind that makes people rethink what they just heard. Evelyn Cross studied me carefully now. Most founders don't say that. I'm not most founders. She leaned forward slightly. Do you understand what you're turning down? Yes, then explain it to me. Then I said the one thing that defined everything. I didn't build this to sell it. The room stayed quiet. Then she smiled. Not politely, not professionally, genuinely. Good answer, she leaned back. Because this wasn't actually a buyout meeting. I frowned. What? She tapped the folder. That was a test. My chest tightened. A test? Yes. She folded her hands. We don't invest in founders who are ready to walk away too early. I stared at her. She slid another document across the table. This one was different. Term sheet, investment, partnership. And the number this time was even bigger. $250 million series investment. For growth, for expansion, not for control. Still mine? I looked up slowly. You're serious? She nodded. Very. I leaned back again. Because now, this wasn't just success. This was scale. This was power. This was something even bigger than I had planned. Evelyn Cross stood. Think about it, she said, but not for too long. She walked toward the door, then stopped, and looked back at me. One more thing. What? She smiled slightly. Your father called our office this morning. I froze. What? He wanted to talk about you. My chest tightened slightly. What did you tell him? She opened the door, that he should have believed in you earlier. Then she left. That night, I stood alone in my office. Again, from being called worthless. 2. Turning down nearly $1 billion. To being offered something even bigger. But this time, it wasn't about proving anything. Not to my father, not to anyone. Because success isn't about the moment people finally notice you. About what you do when they do. And for the first time in my life, I knew exactly what I was going to do next.